stepping down from his head job with the Steelers. Adam Schefter, get us up to speed on the latest here.
Laura, it's the end of an era in Pittsburgh. Mike Tomlin was the longest tenured head coach in the National Football League until today. Now he essentially leaves the organization, and he is expected to take some time off from football. He could be back as a broadcaster for the 26th season if that's what he wants to do. As some people believe, he could be an analyst on set. If not, he could take a year off, and then the Pittsburgh Steelers would control his rights and have to be compensated if another team wanted to hire him. As for the Pittsburgh Steelers, they now embark upon their fourth head coaching hire since 1969. I remember when they hired Mike Tomlin. So many people thought they were going to hire Russ Grimm and keep it within the Steelers family. The Steelers veered outside the expectation and the norm and hired the Vikings defensive coordinator, a young man in his mid-30s named Mike Tomlin that not a lot of people were familiar with. And they nailed that hire, and he went on to make his mark, coaching 19 seasons, never having a losing season in Pittsburgh, winning one Super Bowl. The Steeler fans would have wanted more Super Bowls, and they let their feelings be known this season that they would have liked him fired. And I think everything ultimately just wore on Mike Tomlin to the point that today at 2 p.m., he informed his team that he would be stepping down as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, a role he has had for 19 seasons. It is the end of an era in Pittsburgh.
He deserves a ton of credit for what he was able to do for those 19 seasons. It did come to a screeching halt in a lot of ways. The Steelers 175 yards, their fewest in a playoff game since December of 1947 versus the Eagles. But that's that. Let's talk about the future, okay? And I'll just go ahead and say this, Adam, so you don't have to say it again. Marcus Freeman was brought up by Dan earlier. Adam says absolutely not happening. Adam, am I handling that correctly? Do you want to jump in here for a second before we get to more names?
No, listen, it's a lot. It's a logic. Dan is logical to bring up the name.
Yes.
I absolutely do not expect Marcus Freeman to make the jump. The Steelers wouldn't be, if they do, they wouldn't be the first team that's checked on Marcus Freeman. He's made it pretty well known. He's not going to the NFL right now.
Okay, so that's where we're at on that. That could always change. Dan's giving me side eye. I don't blame him. It's fine. He slapped himself.
Right,
Mina,
what? Come for me next.
Yeah, okay. So Mina's got a name she wants to throw out.
Well,
Who is it?
So first, I want to start by saying I personally like a lot of the defensive candidates in this cycle.
I know.
You've heard me mention I'm a big fan of Jesse Minter. I thought his defense put on a show that was excellent this weekend. Robert Saleh, God, what a case he's made for himself working with that, right? Those injuries. And then Brian Flores, I think, is one of the 2 or 3 best defensive minds in the world. And you don't forget, he spent a year with Pittsburgh, so there's a relationship there, even when he was suing the league and whatnot. Okay, so all that said, while I like those guys for a lot of jobs, personally, if I'm a Steelers fan who has not watched a competent offense since, like, Game of Thrones was on, would love to bring in an offensive. 2018 was last time they got, like, top 10 quarterback play. Okay, I would love for them to bring in an offensive mind, personally, just because they're going to have to make a decision on the quarter. They're going to go younger at the quarterback position, whether it's in the draft or elsewhere, if not this year, next year, et cetera. Unfortunately, there aren't as many good offensive minds out there. You know, Stefanski, I'm giving a call. Here's the thing I'm going to throw out, and Adam.
Wait, put her back on camera for her to say this.
Sorry, it was very long-winded.
No.
Here's the thing I want to pitch, and Adam, you can jump in and shoot me down like you did Dan. If the Packers don't get a deal done with Matt LaFleur,
100%.
I'm calling them.
Yeah,
That would be a dream hire.
No, I'm 100%.
Guess what? They'd have to get in line.
Oh.
Yeah, but they're the Steelers.
Yes, I mean, yeah.
Do they go in front of the line?
This is I'm saying they're not able to work something out.
They get a fast pass.
I know Green Bay wants to keep them.
They get a lightning
I'm just saying, if Green Bay is not able to work something out,
I like that one.
That would be my favorite name.
Yeah, I like that. Go ahead, Shefty.
I would say this, Matt LaFleur.
I love this show.
We said yesterday. we said yesterday that they're trying to work out a deal with Matt LaFleur. It's almost 48 hours later.
Yeah.
There's still no deal with Matt LaFleur.
It shouldn't be that hard, right?
We're waiting.
It shouldn't be hard.
No, it should not be that hard. And by the way, let me say this. They still might work it out with Matt LaFleur. They might. They're trying. But it shouldn't be a difficult deal to do. We could do the numbers right now, crunch the math, and come up with a deal to get it done. And it's ticking, and there are more openings, and there are teams waiting. So we need an answer.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten one.
So here's
and last thing on that. And last thing on that. As my friend Wendy would say, there's something going on in Green Bay. We got to keep watching Green Bay.
Okay. So this is what we said yesterday, Schefty, when you were kind of intimating. This is. I love this. When you were saying trying to work out a deal, my response when we were on the show was, this is easy to get done. We don't have to try anything. Yeah. One of the better head coaches, this is what the good head coaches get paid. We make this simple.
Caller, which is...
And so if we're trying, I will say this. If Green Bay and Matt LaFleur decide that it's not going to work out, the first step I would do is then call Matt LaFleur if I was the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I would jump at the opportunity to hire him. Then I would figure out the way to get Malik Willis as my quarterback. And then I'm all of a sudden in a situation where Pittsburgh now becomes a little bit more relevant because it fits that quarterback void that they have. So I would agree with that. Now let's live in a world because, one, the Pittsburgh Steelers, you give them the benefit of the doubt, right? They've done a good job with this. But they've done it twice in the last, I think, 30-something years. Both of them were defensive-minded head coaches that were young and a little bit under the radar. If that's what the organization wants to do again, I like the Flores, I like Salah, I like Minter. Two other names, Matt Burke, who's the defensive coordinator of the team that just destroyed them, I do think is another name that could just come out of nowhere. Ajiro Evero, who's a defensive coordinator of the Carolina Panthers, who every time you walk out of a meeting with him, you're like, that guy is
and has done a lot with little.
Epitome
to Burke, who's getting to coach the Monstars.
Superstars, but epitome of a head coach. So it does come down to a little bit of a philosophy organization-wise.
I've actually enjoyed just watching y'all talk and listening.
Throwing out theories.
There's two things. Dan, you hit the nail on the head. There is a problem in Green Bay. And Schefter, fight me if you want to, because sometimes we go through this in all season.
Right.
I don't know one great player or one great coach that organizations don't get their deals done unless it's something going on beyond getting the deal done. When we talked about the Michael Parsons deal, it was way more than just football. Because when you look at the results and you look at what he's done, like you said, this should have been very easy to get Matt LaFleur done. First of all, if you regard Matt LaFleur like we regard him, or like most of the league regard him, you wouldn't let him get in this last year of the contract. Now, I know there's a way that Green Bay does business, and they don't pay coaches the inordinate amount of money, but this is 2026 now, and you got to pay coaches an inordinate amount of money when they're really good at what they do. All right, so that's one thing. The other thing is this. D.O., the Pittsburgh Matt LaFleur and Malik Willis thing would be a godsend. Because we really all believe that Malik Willis is on the uptick and being one of those guys that eventually can be a really good starter in this league based on what we've seen him do in his role with Matt LaFleur when Jordan Love hasn't been available. And I go back to something y'all said about hiring the defensive guys. This is a completely different league then. It was a completely different league. The league was based on defense. Yeah. It was based on running the football and being able to defend and stop the run. You think about the teams that Mike Tomlin inherited, those were line of scrimmage physical football teams that won games. And obviously we remember the passes to Plexico and we remember the passes to all of these guys. But ultimately the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I know this because I was playing in Dallas at the time, the Pittsburgh Steelers was built at the line of scrimmage. That is the identity that they wanted, and Mike Tomlin fit that as well as anybody with how he thought about the game of football. It's different now. It's an offensive league. And I know it's crazy to say that after what we saw Houston and what we see in Seattle do, but you got to be able to put points on the board. And I think the Matt LaFleur thing is great. One last name, and I'm going to throw it out there because we're having fun on this show.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And I know that he just signed a new contract. Signetti out of Indiana.
Oh.
I think his personality would fit with Pittsburgh. Now, I'm not sure how all of that business part goes, but what I've watched this dude do with a university that was absolutely not even thought of potentially ever winning a national championship in this landscape of college football, and the rapport that he has as a head coach and what he's done with this team, I think would make him a very enticing hire, especially with a franchise that loves stability.
There's a lot I want to get to here. I don't even know where to start. We'll start with Curt Cignetti. His name has come up a bunch of times. People have pushed the name. I have not heard an NFL team yet talk about approaching Curt Cignetti. That doesn't mean it can't happen, but I have not heard that be an active option for a team. As for the Steelers and their tradition and history, you're right. They've gone defense the last couple of times. I think Bill Cowher was defense and special teams when they hired him.
And special
and
teams.
obviously,
Yep.
Mike Tomlin was defense, right? And so it is a new day and age, and the NFL today is different than the NFL was some 20 years ago when Mike Tomlin was coming up through the coaching ranks. So if the Pittsburgh Steelers want to go young, I could see them shifting their focus to go on the offensive side, which brings us back to the curious case of one Matt LaFleur and why it's lingered. You touched on a very important topic there, Big Swaggo, and you said, why has it gone on this long with him heading into the last year of his contract? And I think the reason is because they changed presidents last summer, and they now have a man, Ed Policy, running the organization. And when you speak to people around the league, they believe he wants to put his mark on the organization, whatever that mark is, whether that's signing Matt LaFleur to an extension or taking the organization in a different direction. I would think we'll know here before the end of the week the mark that he does plan to put on this organization. But it really belongs to him and what he decides to do here, because it should not be a difficult deal to work out. And here we are into Tuesday afternoon. Like, they've been talking for a while.
Yeah.
And nothing has gotten worked out yet. And they still might. They were talking before that, Laura.
Oh.
They still might work it out. They still might figure it out. But they haven't yet. And we'll see if they can get something done. And if not, to your point, Matt LaFleur vaults up the leaderboard, and all of a sudden we have a whole host of coaches available that nobody ever would have thought would have been available when the season ended.
Yeah. Harbaugh, LaFleur, Flores. Yeah, it's amazing. Okay, so listen, we're going to get into that. Dan is making an imaginary map on the screen right now. We have to go to commercial break, but on the other side, breaking news in the NFL today as Mike Tomlin decides to step down from his head coaching position with the Steelers after 19 seasons. Our top story that will be on throughout the rest of this show. And Steelers president Art Rooney II released a statement that reads in part, "It is hard for me to put into words the level of respect and admiration I have for Coach Tomlin. He guided the franchise to our 6th Super Bowl championship and made the playoffs 13 times during his tenure. His track record of never having a losing season in 19 years will likely never be duplicated." Interesting to think about how big those shoes are to fill. As we welcome in Brooke Pryor, our Steelers reporter. Brooke, busy day for you. What more can you tell us about how the players and staff are reacting to this news?
Laura, I can tell you that while it's been a very surreal day in Pittsburgh, it started out like a normal one. Mike Tomlin arrived at the facility a little after 5:30, about when he normally gets here. I was in the locker room 15 minutes before he told the team at their 2 p.m. meeting, which is when they've typically met the day after a season-ending loss, after they've gone through some locker room clean-out. And from the conversations I had while players told me about Mike Tomlin's legacy, and tight end Jonnu Smith told me that he is one of the best leaders he's ever been around, there was no indication that an announcement that Mike Tomlin would no longer be the head coach was imminent. Although I will say I got a text from a former player this morning who thought that it was a possibility, because last night when I asked Mike Tomlin how he would come to a decision about his future, he said that he wasn't in that mindset and he wasn't in a big picture mindset. And as that player pointed out to me, that's the first time he had ever heard Mike Tomlin not talk about his future being in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, Brooke, you have covered Tomlin closely for years. Just as we wait and see what his next opportunity is, you got any favorite memories? His quotes, of course, are the best you're ever going to find. Anything you can share with us?
Well, Laura, clear out the rest of the block. I've got so many stories. But one thing about Mike Tomlin, he is competitive in everything. That includes press conferences. And of course, to him, winning a press conference is getting the best soundbite, shutting down my questions. One of my favorite questions over the years has been what gives him confidence that his team will respond or that something will happen. And he always responds with something like 53 years of life or my experience, on and on. Well, as he was walking off the field in Detroit earlier this year after beating the Lions, he walked off, and as he went into the locker room, he yelled, "That's what gives me confidence, Brooke." I got to tell you, I've never had a coach yell my name going into the locker room. And even funnier, I wasn't standing there. So I'm glad he finally answered my question. And the other great moment when I think of Mike Tomlin, I was shopping in Pittsburgh on Shady Side earlier this year. I had some bags in my hands, and all of a sudden I heard a horn honking, and then I heard someone yell, "Hey, quit spending money." And that was my mother, apparently channeled through Mike Tomlin, telling me to stop shopping and put down the credit card. So I appreciate Mike Tomlin for trying to keep my budget in check.
I love it. I mean, Brooke, that's how you know you've made it. Thanks so much for the latest from you. You mentioned 53 years old. At 53 this season, Tomlin became the third youngest coach in NFL history to reach 200 wins. Incredible accomplishment by him, behind Curly Lambeau and Don Shula. We got a lot more coming your way here on NFL Live. You can see.
Holy shit, Mike, wouldn't that be awesome? Only if John takes the Pittsburgh job. Wow, wouldn't that be interesting? I don't know, that thing last week maybe disqualified him for my opening after our kicker missed a kick to let them advance. Good for Mike.
You can tell his skin's crawling as he's talking about it.
Our kicker missed a kick to let them advance.
Yeah.
You didn't beat us.
Yeah, exactly. There was some shade there. I love it.
Right.
Jeremy Fowler joining us now. Jeremy, what more can you tell us about what you know about what's next for Mike Tomlin?
Yeah, so I've talked to a source close to Mike Tomlin, and really for the last couple weeks, Tomlin's trying to figuring out, do I just need a break? Do I need rest? I don't sense right now that the motivation is I need to go get another job. I need to go coach the Dolphins or whatever job is open. I really believe he's going to reset, take some time away, and he's going to be fielding TV offers. There will be several. He is incredibly engaging. He's going to have the opportunity to go and be a studio guy and make a lot of money doing that. That's my expectation right now based on what I'm hearing from people close to Mike Tomlin. Now, this carousel has been crazy with 9 jobs open, and others would love to have Mike Tomlin. So could things get a little wacky? I'm not certainly taking that off the table. I just don't expect that right now.
Okay, interesting.
I think he was burned out, really.
Yeah, and you don't blame him. 19 seasons, all that. We just threw something out with Mina's suggestion. Maybe if things aren't working out with the Packers and Matt LaFleur, does Matt LaFleur kind of launch into the top candidate for the Steelers? Dan then brings up a great point about Malik Willis. This is just for people at home that might have missed our last block. Malik Willis being with Matt LaFleur on the Steelers team. I want to go back there. Dan, if they get Willis, are they an instant contender and they've got Matt LaFleur as their head coach? This is all hypothetical, but it's fun. We can do this.
Yeah,
Willis plus anyone.
Yeah,
sure.
Good point. Right.
Him regardless.
Yes, an instant contender within the division, absolutely, because there are question marks elsewhere. We don't know what's going to happen with Cleveland. We don't know what's going to happen with Baltimore. Obviously, Lamar and a ton of talent are there, but there's these dominoes that are going to have to fall. And so if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, because I was thinking about this when the news broke today, and I was going back to when this organization started with Ben Roethlisberger, and it wasn't this 3 or 4 year stretch of them being a bad football team and they had a top 3 pick and all of a sudden they figured it out. They were in a 2-year stretch, won the division, I think in 2002, won the division in 2003, and then in 2004, or maybe it was 2000 and 2001. And then in 2003, they were 5-11 or something like that. They took Ben Roethlisberger in 2004 draft. They won the division, I believe, in 2004 and went 15-1. So this could be a quicker fix when it comes to success than people think. They have to get the right quarterback.
I think the question is, if you get the right quarterback, who's the right coach to shepherd that quarterback? And if it's a young quarterback, to me, that changes the picture a little bit. I think that's part of the reason why Mike Tomlin is no longer the coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. As great as he is, as wonderful as he'll be for someone else, I don't know if he's the guy I personally would want if I had a young quarterback. Yeah. So who is that guy? Are there any head coaching? I mentioned LaFleur, who's obviously has a great track record now. Is there anyone else you think that the league looks at as being this is a guy we'd love to pair with a young quarterback?
Ooh, so it's fascinating because the offensive pool, this carousel, is not considered great. It's considered defensive heavy. The Steelers have always leaned on those assertive, big presence defensive guys. But, Dio, you know this. Things are changing, and you saw Shanahan the other day in that San Fran game. You need somebody who's going to be great schematically, week to week, depending on the opponent. So I believe the Steelers will depart from maybe the pass plan and look at those offensive options. I look at like Nate Shieldhouse in L.A., like somebody up and coming who's not going to cost a lot. The Steelers they're not going to spend $20 million on a coach here. They're going to probably find somebody up and coming. I think
would they spend $20 million on Matt LaFleur?
That's who Matt LaFleur was when, years ago.
Right,
he was the McVay tree guy.
Yeah, they take pride in finding somebody who's kind of down in the rough a little bit.
Yeah, Coco want me to talk. The only thing I can think of, and we done threw coaches out there, is really the pressure is on Omar Khan. Like, that's the name that everybody should be paying attention to. We've talked about this team and how they've drafted. They brought in pieces. They've tried to work through free agency. They found, y'all, we only a year removed, or 2 years removed from Russell Wilson and Justin Fields being on the Pittsburgh Steelers football team. This has been an abject failure at trying to figure out what the future of your franchise is going to be at that position. They've been taking shots. It just hasn't worked out. So the general manager now is under the most amount of pressure. It won't be fire Tomlin. It'll be fire Khan if they don't get this going right within a year or two of this organization.
And it's kind of what we illustrated off the top of the show. They've been a victim of